At the start of every season, the most often asked question to me and other YouTubers is, what should I play for my placement matches? Honestly, I do have some suggestions for this and I do have preferences, but I always try to avoid telling people to pick a specific champion. Instead, my advice is more open-ended, in this case especially. I won't try to restrict or pressure people into picking certain champions. This video will be divided into 3 parts. Part 1 will talk about what things you should look for in placement champions and what things to avoid. Part 2 will give examples of great champions for placement matches, of course these are my opinions, and Part 3 will be my personal go-to champions for placement matches, although if you've been a long-time fan, you'll already know who they are. Straight off the bat, I want you to take the champions you feel you know best. Don't include any that you sort of know how to play. Just pick the champions you like playing the most and the ones you consider yourself half decent with. This will be your pool of champions to pick from. People play better with champions they are most comfortable with and can avoid tilting and panicking as a result. This isn't anything new and you should know that. With that in mind, within your pool of champions, I recommend you favor champions with certain traits over others. When it comes to ranking up in silver and gold, I have always preferred champions with crowd control and damage. The crowd control can suck or be situational, but all you need is to be able to freeze someone for a short time to allow you to assassinate them. The rule of thumb is that speed and surprise are what win games. Players in lower divisions are pretty awful at grouping up and working together, and you can expose their weaknesses as a result. This goes both ways in consideration of your team and opponents, so you have to win games fast and hard before your teammates throw or the enemy wises up. Avoid champions that do minimal damage, such as pure supports or pure tanks, unless you can build them damage. Like if you're playing support Sona, don't be afraid to just get an AP and start wrecking people. Burst damage is insanely better than sustained in this case too. Being able just to snuff out an important target is far too useful at securing wins. If you can take out the only good player on the enemy team, or just anyone in fact, it can help your team push for a victory even if your teammates aren't all that good. A team of ham nuggets can still shit out a win if you hand them a clear advantage. So among the pool of champions you picked, lean towards the champions with some form of crowd control but the ability to actually defeat targets. Avoid pure support and pure CC champions. This might become easier to understand when I point out the specific champions. I'll start off with champions that don't precisely capture this idea, but most of you will want me to bring them up anyways. Speaking mostly from the jungle, carry type champions like Yi, Tryndamere and such are fine and can utterly slaughter opponents, but they're fighting 2 battles in one game. You're relying on your opponents not being able to stop you, and you're also relying on your teammates being able to keep their shit together long enough for you to get started or cheat out some advantage. This is unreliable, and unless you're very good, then I wouldn't recommend it. Speaking strictly as a jungler, if you have any of the following champions on your list, then I recommend leaning towards them. Champions like Kindred, Xin Zhao, Jarvan, Udyr, Dr. Mundo, Jax, Riven, Olaf, Nocturne, Rengar, Wukong, Rammus, and Hecarim are pretty damn good. I'm pretty sure you get the picture of what kind of champions I was describing in part 1. Again, I'm mostly speaking out of a jungler's point of view, but you can apply this towards the lanes as well. You would lean towards Nautilus or Annie and such for support and just try to kill people. A big player in this is Blitzcrank. Mid lane, you try to pick stuff like Talon, Zed, and LeBlanc and just go for kills. As you can see by the pool of champions, the idea with them is that they can set up plays and slaughter the enemy too, and they can do that for most of the game. Remember, you can't always rely on your teammates and, especially if you're the jungler, you can't expect them to take care of their own lanes. You have to pick someone who can walk up and do their job for them. For example, someone like Xin Zhao can gank early with both crowd control and damage, fight plenty of champions 1v1, fuck someone up hard in a team fight, and potentially snowball out of control. Champions like these are ideal. They do often have lots of weaknesses, but chances of them being exploited in lower divisions are slim. Things change when you get to Platinum and above, but by then you hopefully have started to learn what's favored and will have learned to pick those instead. For my personal favorite champions to use, you guys already know who some of them are. Number 1 is the main man Jarvan. Straight out universally powerful in a lot of aspects with exploitable weaknesses of course. In lower divisions, those weaknesses aren't taken advantage of, so you can pretty much just run a train on your opponents. Nocturne is another favorite, although I still avoid him against uber tanky teams. Basically, he's a fusion of Master Yi and Pantheon in the sense that he can surprise opponents and dice them if they stick in melee for too long. You can apply some pressure pre-6 and then punish overextensions once you get your ultimate. Better still, he's a really good farmer, so if you can't get any ganks early, you can just farm up and still buy the items necessary to destroy the enemy team with. Olaf is the unstoppable hyper carry. I consider him a safer version of Tryndamere in that while he has less damage and relies on mana, he's immune to crowd control and can make a mad dash towards vital targets. He doesn't have as much crowd control or any hard CC for that matter, but it doesn't matter as lower division players don't react appropriately either way. He isn't the easiest to play though, so you might have some difficulties using him. Hecarim is one of my top dogs. I know I bash him a lot and I really do think he's a super flawed jungler and in a lot of ways overrated. But if there's one thing he does and does so well in a disgusting way is snowball out of control. Hecarim is arguably one of the top dogs in snowball potential and he combines two traits that are rarely seen together. Powerful initiation with high ass fucking damage. Hecarim can start off a fight in an explosive manner and beat down vital carries. He has a shitload of weaknesses, but again in lower divisions they aren't going to bother. Last but not least, Vi. She's similar to Jarvan but trades control for security. Her ability to absolutely shut on one person can enable you to secure a foothold for your team and there's not much your opponents can do. Chokeslam a bitch without a hitch. I would have said Trundle and Dr. Mundo, but they've basically been taken from me this season, so until they get abandoned again, I won't be seeing them for a while. In summary, stick with what you know, but lean towards those that have strong burst damage and at least some form of control. In lower divisions, you can't count on your teammates to do their jobs properly, so you may have to do it for them. Play selfishly if you have to, but end the games as quick and as clean as you can.